Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainable Tech Leader podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Adam Link. Adam has a background that sits right at the intersection of technology, leadership, and decision making under pressure. He spent years as a senior engineering manager at Coinbase, working through periods of rapid growth and the IPO, where he led large scale cloud optimization work and saw firsthand what high performance looks like under real pressure. Alongside that, Adam has a doctorate in computer science and is also a CFP, now working closely with software professionals and founders on long term financial strategy and decision making. What makes his perspective particularly relevant is that he's lived on both sides inside high pressure tech environments and now helping leaders think more clearly about risk, optionality, and sustainability. This conversation isn't just about financial tips, it's also about how leaders make decisions when the data is imperfect, the pressure's high, and the consequences are real, especially as technology and AI continue to compress the timeframes and increase complexity. Adam brings a thoughtful, evidence based lens to leadership that goes beyond frameworks, and I'm really looking forward to exploring how financial clarity, behavioral patterns, and judgment all shape sustainable leadership. Adam, that was a real mouthful, but welcome to the podcast. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about how all of these topics intersect with one another. But would you like to add anything?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the intro. Yeah, it's wow, quite a lot. No, looking forward to chatting today as well. I think we've got hopefully some good questions to answer, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem at all, Adam. I think your topic is super, super interested, and I think one that actually we don't touch on when we talk about sustainable leadership and actually look at the financial lens. So, my first question, Adam, for you is you've led teams through high pressure tech environments, including Coinbase, how amazing, during a really critical phase of an IPO, and later moved into financial strategy. What moments in that journey fundamentally changed how you think about leadership?
Well, that's a good question. It's a good question. I think for me, there's kind of a couple parts of my journey where I got to think differently about leadership, and it really kind of changed how I think about constructing teams and also what I look for in teams. So the first one of these was actually early on in Coinbase. I moved from being an individual contributor to a manager.
Mhm,
And at the time, I had probably one of the best managers I've had in my career, who was the manager.
mhm,
And he was growing a team that had gotten too big for him. So he needed to split the team under two managers reporting to him directly. And I still remember the team at the time was about 12 people or so. And so myself and another individual were chosen to be the new, and we kind of went through this process of splitting up the team.
mhm.
And it was kind of this process of, you watch your coworkers become your direct reports, and people kind of got to vote with their feet as to whether or not they liked you or liked the other guy more.
Mm,
And luckily, the co-manager, the other manager, and myself, we split up our teams, and we got the same number of direct reports. And the two of us really started learning as much as we could from our manager, whose name was Shane. And for about the first year of being a manager, both this other manager and myself just met with Shane, every week and said, "Okay, here's the problems I have. What would you do? What would you do in this case?"
yeah.
Um, and what that really taught me about leadership in this particular case was this other manager and myself were kind of learning how to step into some shoes that were incredibly difficult to fill.
Mm,
And we were lucky enough to have the support from the person whose shoes we were stepping into, that he wanted to make sure his team was taken care of,
mm,
and he wanted to give us all the ability and context that he could to kind of carry on what he had started, but also be able to change it in our own way.
mm,
So when I look at team transitions now, and I've done this a couple times in my own career where I build a team and then step out, is I look at it much the same way that Shane did, where it's like, do I have a vision? Have I communicated the vision? And have I empowered the person stepping into my role to take over the team, keep the good stuff going that I've got going, but also given them the space to create
mm,
what that team is that they want it to be. So it takes a lot of moving parts to make that happen. You
mm,
have to have a manager who's supporting you in that transition. One of the best transitions I've ever had as an IC to a manager, and it's really what I try to strive for other folks coming in under me now.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? Because it also imparts trust in you as well, which is actually, yes, I've done it my way, but actually trusting that you'll create your own version of what good leadership looks like for you. Okay, my next question is you've seen senior and engineers and leaders leave roles with significant financial upside because they had huge kind of payouts, etc., but they were exhausted or stuck. So what do you think people underestimate about the cost of operating under constant high performance?
Yes, this is very common with high performing teams. Another manager that I reported to during my career once told me that high performers, they don't give you signs of burnout
Mm,
the way that low performers do. High performers will just one day leave.
mm,
And he said that's the scariest thing about hiring a high performing person is they will not show necessarily the external signs of stress or the external signs of burnout. They will instead find a new game, take their ball and leave.
mm,
And high performers like that have made up their mind before they've even come to you to tell you that they're leaving. So there is almost no saving grace that you can have, you know. So for those of you who don't know, as a manager, usually when somebody tells you that they're leaving, that is the beginning of the negotiation to make them stay.
mm,
And so a good manager will say, okay, thank you for letting me know you're leaving. What could be better? What could be different? If you can give me a week, can I see if I can resolve some of these for you? Right? Like that's the manager's playbook to try to save that
yeah,
person, especially when it's what we call regretted attrition, which means you're leaving. I don't want you to leave.
mm,
As a high performer, most of the times when that person comes to you, they'll say, I'm leaving. And you say, what could I do to make it better?
mm,
And they will say, nothing.
mm,
And as a manager, it's the hardest spot to be put in because you have no kind of saving throw, right?
mm.
To use a D&D reference,
Yeah.
you have no saving throw to try to get that person right. And so the thing with high performers, right, and managing that burnout and that stress, there's a couple things that happen that I've seen along the way.
Mm,
So the first is a high performer who doesn't have the ability to leave yet,
mm,
right? And this is someone who's going to keep continuing to work, keep continuing to deliver, keep continuing to meet and exceed the
mm,
milestones, and that's just part of their DNA. This is the type of person that's not just going to be okay with an A; they want an A plus, right? They're not okay with just 95%; they want 102%, right?
mm,
The type of person who asks, "How else can I get extra credit?" Right?
mm,
Those are your high. Now, the scary part about high performers under stress, and we found this out at Coinbase after an IPO,
mm,
is when you put high performers under stress and give them all the financial tools they need for the rest of their life. In other words, they're rich enough that they can quit. You suddenly have high performers that will leave because they have a true calling elsewhere. And similar to a high performer leaving because they found another option and you don't get a saving throw, I actually had one of my high performers end up leaving my team to go start a coin operated laundry business.
mm.
And I was
Interesting.
like, what are you doing? Right? Why are you going from software to coin operated laundry? And he basically said, look, I want to take a step back from software. I've always thought it'd be interesting to own a coin operated laundry business, and I want to go do more running.
Mm,
And so that's literally what he did. He left, and that's last I checked in with him. I think that's what he's doing now, right? But really, when you have that stress, that constant stress, there is a point at which those high performers have another option,
mm,
and they can go and choose to pursue what they're really passionate about.
yeah,
And as a manager, right, your job is to make sure that what they're really passionate about is what they're doing.
yeah.
And if what they're really passionate about is not what they're doing, be prepared for that eventual break, right? And help support them through to whatever that passion actually is.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you're right, they're not actually leaving. They might be high performers. Actually, any IPO is pretty stressful and can lead to burnout. I can definitely vouch for that as well. But if they are leaving for a different calling, then you're absolutely right. Your role is to support them, right? And their calling might have changed. Now they have financial options. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yep.
And how do you think the mindset changes, Adam? So when you are leading in that way and you're approaching your career move in that way, you look at the pressure versus the trade-off, how does that mindset change?
I guess in terms of what, like the mindset for me as a leader,
Yes, yes.
yeah, I think what you have to focus on as a manager with high performers with optionality is creating an environment that entices people to stay.
Mm,
When you think about the evolution of management over, I'd say, the last 100 years, pre World War I, right around World War I era. There was a lot of, you have this job, be thankful you have a job, listen to management. They set the direction and tone, right? You talk to manager for the day. As we've moved now through kind of a post-industrialized world into most modern economies now largely service-based and knowledge worker, your job as a manager is to create an environment people want to come to.
Mm.
And so there are there are many takes on management worldwide, right? And I've seen this with varying degrees and certain different demographic backgrounds as to kind of where you are in your journey.
Mm.
I think when you look at, North America and Europe, management styles in knowledge-based we are very much focused on creating an environment that workers want to come to, and it's almost this attraction management,
Mhm.
right? Where you recognize that people have options, they don't have to be there. When you look at maybe non-knowledge environment, right? Or you think of a lower skill environment, there is still that power imbalance where it shifts, where the manager basically says, look, you're here, be lucky you're here.
Mm.
I don't have to make this place good for you, you just have to follow my orders.
Mm.
And so recognizing kind of where you are on the management spectrum and what your industry demands really helps you then keep the best performers. Because if you bring a mindset of, you're lucky you have this job, you report to me, do what I say,
Mm.
to a group of high performers, you will quickly find yourself without a group of high performers,
Mm.
especially in knowledge-based work. Because if you bring that very top-down mandate to them and the team can look elsewhere and they have friends elsewhere, they're going, my boss is a jerk, right? And everyone else says, well, just come over to me, right? I can get you a referral. It's fine,
Yeah.
right? That top talent will just leave,
Yes.
right? And so there really is a mindset then as a manager that not only are you creating the environment for these people to prosper in,
Mm.
right? But you then also have to care about because the environment you created last year for your people may not be the environment they need to prosper in this year, right? And so for me, I do this by having regular one-on-ones with my team and saying, okay, what do you need? And it's basically like two questions, right? Do you like the work that you're doing?
Mm.
And what else do you need, right? And the first one is, do you like the work that you're doing? Usually gets out to, well, do you like the work that you're doing, or is there something else you're passionate? This is where I start to figure out: is your passion the work you're doing, or is your passion something else? Is there a better opportunity for you elsewhere,
Mm.
right? Internal to the company or external, and is there anything else I can be doing? Is really it's their ability to kind of give me an order, right? And my job as a boss, and this is around like the servant leadership
Yeah.
mentality, is to clear the blockers away and make my employees, my team's place a great place to work. Right. So is there anything else I can do for you? It's like, well, look, you could stop having meetings with me. Awesome. I'll just check in asynchronously, right? Like that's great. I have people tell me that, like, I just need to meet with you less. I just need to meet less.
Mm.
I have permission to skip meetings, right? And they're like, awesome, how can I get work done? That's the mindset shift that you
Mm.
have to really undertake as a manager
Mm.
with these high performers.
How do you build trust? Because you are right. I think our kind of tech background, we do a lot of focus work, right? And we need time to focus, especially with the complexity of the work that we do. And you can reduce the number of one-to-ones and reduce the number of meetings. But then how do you build trust with your team?
Yes. The biggest way to build trust is to say what you're going to do and then do it. Trust is basically, I have seen enough examples of you telling me what you're going to do and you doing it that I believe that what you tell me you're going to do, you will do.
Mm.
That's basically trust, right? And when you work with, so I work with a remote team worldwide,
Mhm.
I tend to default to trust as a baseline. Not everyone does this. I like to do it because I think it really meets adults where they are, or where they should be. So you as an engineer, right, and I've got engineers under me, as an engineer, you start out with a pretty long, well, with a pretty long leash is the vernacular. Basically, like the idea is, I'm going to trust you by default.
Mhm.
And as I see you continue to do what you say and then deliver on that, right? I continue to build trust in you. Now, what I look for is outcomes-based management. So if I say this needs to be done, right? We need to ship this new feature and it needs to land this amount of impact. I really don't care how you ship it. I really don't care the process you use to ship it,
Mhm.
right? I'm not going to be in there looking at variable naming, right? Like super low level programming. I don't really care about that. But if you tell me it's going to ship on Tuesday and it ships on Tuesday, we're good. If you tell me it's going to ship on Tuesday and Tuesday comes and I haven't heard anything other than it's going to ship, and you suddenly tell me it's not going to ship, you start to be viewed as someone who's not trustworthy,
Mm,
right? Or over promising and under delivering.
mm,
And we all struggle. All high performers do struggle with this because you want to say yes to everyone and you want to deliver everything. But what builds trust is saying, I told you Tuesday, it's not going to be Tuesday, it's going to be Thursday.
mm,
Thursday comes saying, look, I told you it was going to be Thursday. What happened Monday, Tuesday was this. It's going to be next. And really managing that story. So that's how I've found engineers build trust with me.
mm,
How I build trust with them then is much the same way that when I tell you something's going to happen, it happens. Or what I call the engineering manager missed.
mhm,
And I'll put this around stuff that I'm not sure it's going to happen. And it's my way of building trust with folks to say, look, I don't know if this is going to happen, but you're adult enough. Here's the rumor I've heard. Just so you know, this may happen. It may not,
mm,
but it may. And I think, and my engineers have told me this, but I think that builds more trust because I can tell you, look, this big thing might happen. And when it does, you knew that I was talking about it.
mm.
When it doesn't, you might say, hey, what happened to this? And I say, well, look, that ended up not being a thing. And I get that's a little dicey sometimes. It's hard for people to keep, two separate in their mind. For engineers who can, I really do try to build trust that way and say, look, here's a bit of my world so you can see into what's happening.
Yeah, I think there are two camps there as well, which is knowledge is power, where people don't share, but actually you do build trust with the more transparent you can be, bearing in mind you're also in a senior role. You can't divulge everything, but actually what you can, yeah, you should, because actually with more information they can make better decisions as well. Totally agree with that. Thanks, Adam. So Adam, I think one of the things I really wanted to explore with you also is your move towards the kind of the more financial side of your current role, and you've built tools that reveal how people think they'll act in downturns versus what they actually do. What has that taught you about human behavior?
Yes. I think it's Mike Tyson said this, that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And it's very true.
Mm,
So, one of the things that management has taught me, and one of the things I carry forward to my financial services practice as well, is that a plan is worthless, but planning is priceless.
mm,
And what I mean by that is when you go forward, whether it's looking at your Q2 planning is what we're doing right now, right? So looking at Q2 planning or what's my financial plan for my family this year, the process of building a plan allows you to think through alternatives,
mm,
allows you to think through, what might happen, and allows you to have an idea of if I'm going to do something, here's kind of the first steps I'm going to take in this scenario.
mm.
The plan itself doesn't actually matter. The plan, the minute you print it out, or the minute you agree on it, it doesn't matter because priorities change,
Yeah.
life changes, financial stress changes, and really, the plan you're going to look back at in 2 months and say, oh, that was worthless,
Mm,
right? We did something entirely different. But the planning process allowed you to start thinking about as those things changed, what paths are you going to take? What are you going to do? One of the things I found in the financial world, people always talk about staying calm under market stress.
mm.
Now we're going to verge here from engineering to finance pretty hard, so just
Yeah, that's
keep up
cool.
with me. But one of the things that we've learned about human behavior is that humans do not follow their plans.
Mm,
And the way I can show you this is there's a study that is done every year. It's called the Dalbar study, DALBAR
mhm,
study. What they do is they study the average return of the market and the average investors. And what they mean by that is if the market returns 7%, what return does an investor actually get? And most people would say, well, 7%, the market got 7%. What actually happens is the average investor gets 1% to 2% lower than the market. Right? Now, what does this show us about human behavior under stress? It's that humans don't handle stress well. When the market goes down and you think, oh my gosh, I'm losing so much money, humans, on average, sell
mm.
and they lock in their loss. If they had just held on, they would have had that go back up and they would have gotten the market.
Yeah.
Right? So, what does that very real gap show us? Well, it's that under stress,
Mm,
humans tend to buckle.
mm,
We tend to not handle stress well. And so, how do you then build a system around you that allows you to handle that? Now, what I do as a financial advisor is I'm that system, right? So, these people come to me and they say, hey, look, I know I might have a problem. I might buckle under stress, right? Can you be my external sounding board,
mm,
my third party partner that when I feel like I'm going to buckle, I can come to you for help?
mhm,
Right? And similar, when you look at your career, this is where you build a circle of mentors around you, right?
mm,
To say, look, when I have this stressful period of time and I'm not handling it well, can I come to you? Right? Because I just need a dispassionate third party to look at it and say, it's not as bad as you think. To quote Coinbase's CEO, he says this all the time: "We're never as good as we think we are, and it's never as bad as we think it is." Right? So, just have that third party out there to remind you of that.
Adam, as we start to look forward, obviously we'd be foolish not to talk about AI. So when we think about the future with smaller teams, AI leverage, and more responsibility landing on individuals, what does that mean for how leaders should prepare financially and psychologically?
Ooh, good question. Okay, so here's what I think AI is going to do. So, and I think this is important because this is going to kind of help with the psychology and financial side of what I'm going to talk about.
Mm,
I think AI is going to take large corporations and make it much more efficient to be a small company. I think small companies have won because they have been more nimble.
mhm,
They don't have the bureaucracy, they don't have the overhead, they don't have to get as many people aligned. What they lack is the financial resources that large companies have, right? And so you basically have to be a scrappy startup, but you can move really fast, you can change direction really fast. I think small companies aided with AI are now going to find that they can punch well above their weight.
mhm.
And let me give you an example of this. This is a real example. This literally happened. I'm looking at the clock here about an hour and a half ago. Okay. Last night, my wife and I were talking about places to have our kids play because I live in a winter climate. There is no indoor playground where I live,
Okay.
right? So everything's outside. It's -9 degrees Fahrenheit outside, which is really cold in Celsius as well.
Yeah.
So the kids can't really play outside. And my wife said, you know what? We should think about getting an indoor playground started here. This was last night. Just think about building an indoor playground. This morning, with the help of AI, in about 5 minutes, I launched a campaign on Facebook with a lead gen form to ask people in my area if they would go to an indoor playground. Okay.
Amazing.
Now, this traditionally takes a long time to, figure out a target market, figure out a business plan, figure out a financial model. Overnight, with a few prompts to AI, I woke up this morning to a 20-page business plan written out, a full financial model written out, a directory of people to contact to get grants and funding, and a meta campaign ready to go live to get leads.
Wow.
This is what I mean by AI will allow small companies to punch well above their weight, right?
Mm,
Because I basically just did what a market research team is supposed to do, a marketing firm is supposed to do, a website design firm was supposed to do, and an artist to make some creatives. Did that all while I slept with a single AI prompt.
yes. It's
So,
phenomenal.
right, exactly, right? So the question then becomes, as a small business who can do all this with AI, what does that mean now for the future of teams, for the future of large businesses? And what do I have to think about psychologically and financially? So the first thing is psychologically. The the hurdle to implement an idea has become basically zero in many areas with AI, right? Anything that you can code, you can, and so anything that you need to build digitally, you can prompt if you know how to connect up the right tools, right? As a software engineer, you've got an incredible unfair advantage here. If you know how to work with APIs, like
Yeah.
the new world is yours,
Yeah.
right? That
Yes.
literally all I did was a bunch of meta tokens and some AI, tokens and mushed them together and in a very non-technical term, mushed them together and
Yeah.
it worked. Right? I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of API documentations and integrations and all that, right? But that's the new world.
Yeah.
And so if it's a digital idea, psychologically, you can now have the idea and 10 minutes later have a working product.
Mm,
Like it's literally that fast, right? So you can now iterate ideas very, very, very quickly,
yeah.
which is awesome,
Mm,
except for the financial side.
mm,
So, what does it mean financially with this AI world and small businesses? Previously, it took you a little bit of time to build a new meta campaign, to build a new product, to build something like that, right? So, the downside of what I just did in the last 24 hours was I am now spending, I think it's like $15 a day on these ads, right?
yeah.
So, I went from zero to spending $15 a day on ads in about 12 hours.
Yeah.
Now that's great until I have a great idea tonight, and I go from zero to spending $15 a day on those ads, and tomorrow and zero to 15 bucks, and you can see how very quickly this becomes like a $200 a day because I have all these ideas and I'm launching all these meta campaigns to
Yeah.
see if the idea works. Right? So the pace of innovation increases, but the cost of that innovation also increases.
Mm,
So as a small business owner, as a individual now looking at using AI to help punch above your weight in terms of impact, you also need to think about how you're funding that
mm,
because you need to have a strong personal balance sheet to be able to afford these tools that allow you to punch above your weight because
Mm.
you still have to pay someone. It's not as much as paying a full marketing firm,
No.
right? But as you iterate, you still do have to pay for this AI usage. So that's something that I'm looking at myself now, and my own personal AI spend on things. And
Yeah.
I will say, where I am today, I think I last looked, it's a couple $100 every month now that I'm using
Yeah.
in AI.
Yeah.
That wasn't there before.
And if there had been a little bit of friction between yourself and your wife having this chat to you implementing the next
Hmm.
morning, what would you have done, say, 2 years ago? What kind of critical thinking would have happened beyond that conversation?
Yes, well, it's a great question because I can point to that exact same indoor playground example. I've had this idea for like 3 years, right? And it's gone nowhere for 3 years, right? And so that tells you like that's the difference between AI and not AI is I've
Yeah.
had this idea for 3 years and have never gotten around to
Yeah.
moving forward with it because the friction of making a business plan and market research and financial modeling and ads and all that. Like it's just a lot of friction, and you just
Yeah.
don't have time for it with everything else. So, I use it as one very concrete example of when I look at my own life, what AI has tactically
Yeah.
changed in the last less than 6 months.
Yeah.
Right, that is an idea I've had for a while, and now as of this morning, the ads are live, and we'll see what I get in the next week. But I think that that really applies to anyone listening. When they look at that mindset shift with
Mm.
AI, that what you've thought about for the last few years
Mm.
now really has the opportunity to become real overnight.
Mm.
Then you just have to make sure that you are ready becomes real psychologically and financially.
Yeah, you did the role of four individual contributors that were specializing in those areas, and now you on your own are taking on all those four roles. So, over time, how would you maintain your mindset beyond the MVP and keep a handle on all the things that you've just taken forward this morning? What kind of mindset would you need for that?
Yeah. Probably a mindset I don't have yet,
Okay.
and probably how am I going to handle it? Very poorly, probably. This is like the entrepreneur's curse, right? Like every good entrepreneur is like, I can do every job at my company, and all of a sudden, as an entrepreneur, you have to do every job at your company, and all of a sudden, you don't have 24 hours in a day
Yeah.
to do any one of those jobs well. You get time constrained, and so you have to hire more people. But I do think what it does mean is that the ability to create and contribute meaningfully is going to be something that's very important, outcomes based kind of business, right?
Mm.
Like you said, I did the job of four different people there, right? I am very acutely aware that I just displaced a marketing firm's client. I just took a Fiverr gig worth of creatives and did it myself,
Mm.
right? Like I took all these things that you could previously get as outcome elsewhere in a week even or a few days and did it overnight, did it with AI. And so, if you are that Fiverr gig that I just replaced with AI, what do you do now, right? What is the new thing that you can do? What is the new service you can pitch?
Mm.
Because outcomes based is one thing, but what additional insight do you have through your unique training that you can give to a AI model to get a better result than I did,
Yeah, amazing.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I think about it now.
Yeah.
When you look at these, smaller companies of a couple people that'll be working together with AI punching above their weight, what unique training do you have that you can bring that AI wouldn't
Mm.
know?
Mm. Mm.
Right? Or would be missing.
Mm.
And I think that's where the value is going to be in now, where the speed to a deliverable might be augmented by AI, but that unique insight you have through that training, right? That really becomes where you add your value.
Adam, I could talk to you for another hour, but I'm going to ask you my final question now, which is really around sustainable leadership, and especially given the topic we've just talked about. So, when you think about how things might feel uncertain, high stake moments as well, what helps you personally stay grounded?
So, two things. The first is I will say on a financial side, you want to give yourself the freedom and ability to step away from anything.
Mhm.
You don't want to be beholden to a job for, paying off your debts or your lifestyle or anything like that, right? Live within your means
Mhm.
and you'll have that flexibility. You'll have the flexibility to do kind of the second thing I'll say here, which is this is the advice I give to everyone who comes to me and says, hey, I'm thinking of taking time off, or is it okay if I go do this with my family? And what I'll tell them is, look, long after the company's gone, your family will still be around.
Yeah.
And so when it comes down to it, and you have to make the decision between work and family, you should be in a financial position that you can always choose what's most important to you. It doesn't have to be family, right? It might be work,
Yeah.
but you should always be able to choose what's most important to you. For me, that's family. And so, on the margin, I'd rather spend my Saturdays with my kids and my wife than doing work.
Yeah,
And I've built my balance sheet where I can. And if that gets me in trouble with someone who wants me to work on a Saturday, then that's
certainly.
not the company I should be working for.
Such an important principle. And actually, the younger you can hear this, the better, because we can start building that financial muscle from a young age. It gives you options later on to do exactly what you've just said. Adam, this has been really insightful. Thank you so much for being on today and sharing a lot of your experiences with us.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been great.